Welcome everybody joining us this afternoon for the second of our webinars in collaboration with Tencent. This webinar is titled Digital Cultural Diffusion, How Digital Technologies Shape Intercultural Understanding. I'm Dr. Jamie Stewart. I'm Senior Researcher and Team Lead at UNU Macau, and I've got the real pleasure today of being a speaker in this session, but also have had the great joy of working with Tencent to pulling this topic together, which is something that I'm both very passionate about and very excited to talk to you about today on the basis of what I believe are some very novel, very important and very interesting issues that are often not discussed very much. I'm a cultural and developmental psychologist by training, so that is why, as I said, I'm particularly interested in this topic. And we have 5 speakers today to discuss many different aspects of this issue. So welcome again. I hope that you enjoy, and I'm going to get into the discussion. So the webinar here today started out with the concept of thinking about what cultural diffusion means in a context in which connectivity is pervasive. What does it mean to express oneself, one's culture in an online environment? And what does that look like now that we have technology in our back pockets pretty much all the time, and that technology can look in many different ways, which is also what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to start this conversation with really highlighting that currently there are a huge number of the population of the world are online, and that's only increasing every year. So 5.35 billion is an estimate of the number of people, which represents 2/3 of the entire population of the globe that are currently connected to the internet. That doesn't mean they're all connected in the same way. Why is this so important? And I want to say this is an estimate, by the way, this 175 zettabytes of information. And a zettabyte, I had to look this up, is 1 trillion gigabytes. That's currently the amount of information that there is online that we potentially have access to. I'm not saying we do all have access to that. And why is that particularly important for this concept of cultural diffusion? All types of information are infused with culture. They're embedded with the way that we perceive the world, as is language, in terms of what we think and feel. So all of that information, huge amount, that we potentially have access to is cultural information, and we can't remove our culture out of the internet. And when I say our culture, that is everyone's culture and the way that we distribute information about ourselves, about our groups. So the way that we're using these technologies, particularly the internet and tech like social media, the content that we produce in this space, as in what we put out about ourselves, how we interact and engage with other people, and the media that we consume as well, what we choose to watch, and stream, and the games that we choose to play, the information that we choose to read, all of these things are embedded with cultural values, beliefs, and practices. So because of this, because of the deep connection between culture and information as it's presented in online environments, I would suggest, and I imagine many others would as well, that digital media and digital technologies can be seen as a cultural gateway that connects diverse people to one another. You can turn on your phone and then go on to social media and then immediately see information from all around the world. It can disseminate information about different cultures and places that you've never been. It's really collapsing space and time and allowing us to connect with one another. And it's one thing that I'm particularly interested in is that it's creating these spaces for online cultural communities. So who we are as we exist as individuals and as groups within cyberspace. That's what we would say an online community. And through these digital media, traditional culture, not just new forms of culture as it's changing the way that we interact, but traditional and heritage cultures can also be transmitted and preserved, and new cultural expressions can be developed So on the basis of this, which is the idea that cyberspace, as we know, is changing the way that we express ourselves, the way that we connect with others, I wanted to ask a question, which is what this webinar is oriented to today, which if digital media has changed the way that we interact and changed the way that the exposure to different groups, the way that we connect with people both inside and outside of our social groups, what are some of the ways that these new technologies can positively impact cultural expression and enhance intercultural understanding? So while we may be talking today about many different approaches to culture in online spaces or in cyberspace, really what I'd like to get out of this is some of the ways that we can enhance positive expressions of culture and people's feelings of safety in terms of expressing themselves and online, as well as ethical representations of culture. So we're all going to come today and take slightly different lenses to think about that particular question. Before I hand over, I just briefly want to go through the schedule today and let everybody who's in the webinar know what is going to happen. So we have 5 presentations, as I mentioned already. We're going to be starting with Dr. Jingyang Huang, talking about content globalization and the cultural economy. And then we're going to be going to Dr. Chuang Li, who's going to be talking to us about Black Myth Wukong, which I've learned lots about since our last webinar, which was on gaming. I'm going to be talking about intercultural contact in the digital age and specifically about acculturation. And Dr. Jenny Ju is going to be talking about WeChat amongst labour migrants. And then last but not least, we have Dr. Han, who's going to be talking to us about leveraging technologies for culture as a global public good from a UNESCO point of view. And after this, so I'll say to everybody who's currently watching, please write your questions for everybody in the chat as we go along, and we'll have around about 20 minutes at the end to go through all questions. So make sure that you're posing them as we go along and collecting your ideas so that we can address those towards the end. And that's it from me for now. I'm going to hand over to our wonderful moderator for this afternoon, Ronald, who is my colleague, and he's going to take us through the session, introducing the speakers as well as moderating the Q&A at the end. Thank you, everybody. I hope you really enjoy this and you get as much out of it as I know I'm going to get. I'll hand over to you now, Ronald.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamie. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar session. Thank you very much, Jamie, for setting a scene to this wonderful webinar that I'm going to head. So in this next session, we are going to hear presentations from the 5 panelists as just been described by Jamie. And I would love to introduce our first speaker, who is Dr. Jingyang Huang, a research assistant professor in the Division of Social Sciences at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Dr. Huang is going to talk to us about content globalization, how cultural economy connects generation between China and Southeastern Asian countries. So Dr. Huang is from the Hong Kong University of Technology, and he has been awarded a Hong Kong Postdoctoral Fellowship in the year 2022 and 2023. His research interests include comparative political economy, political sociology, and public policy. His research focuses on the political economy of digital governance in China, particularly to analyze the extensive business institutions and professional networks that arise from the Chinese government's leveraging on information technology and to examine the effectiveness of smart systems. Dr. Huang, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ronald, for introducing me. And I'm really excited to join such amazing panel to discuss about this topic. The topic of my present today is about how the younger generation achieve two-way culture exchange in an era when internet platform play a really important role in cultural communication and the culture economic. The culture economic and the content productions are not new. During the end of 20th centuries, when the internet economy was underdeveloped, the globalization of the culture industry has already begun at that time. Content created by big capital in advanced capitalist countries like Hollywood, MTV, we can call this phase of content globalization 1.0. A company and organization control the acceptance of our content at that day. But today, a large amount of content is no longer produced by company and organizations. Individuals or organizations create and disseminate content products on internet platform. And in this context, ordinary people, especially in the global south, is no longer recipients of cultural globalization, but also a content producer. I distinguish 4 types of content productions based on the 2 dimensions of intended and unintended, and organization and individual. Intended organized production, for example, like K-pop, K-drama, and Hollywood movie. Besides this is not only commercial behavior or strategy, but also sometimes a country's cultural soft power strategy. Intended individual production, for example, like some influences of YouTubers and bloggers, and they create their own personal IP. I need to give the example of the unintended organization behavior, which I will mention again later, is the spread of the Thailand style makeup among young people in China. The popularity of this Thai style makeup in China was not intentionally marketed in the beginning. The popularity of the Thai makeup is due to the Thai drama and the performance of Thai pop star on Chinese reality shows, which have sparked discussion about their image among young Chinese netizens. This has attracted some brands to collaborate with well-known bloggers on Chinese internet platform to drive sales of related products. These 4 content production model, I think, can transform into each other. For example, some internet celebrity start to build their personal IP because they happen to create the internet meme unintentionally. This new content production model is particularly important for cross-cultural communication among the internet generation born in recent years. Some studies now classify the population born after the 21st century as the I generation. They born to have a digital born to the internet. They spend amounts of time using social media. They are less interested in face-to-face contact with others, preferring instead to connect with smartphone. And this generation is much more tolerant of other different races and different cultures. Less interesting identifying with a political party and more likely to think of themselves for themselves and not believe authority figure in charge of government. And the content production on platform play a role here. For example, Chinese drama have influences on young people in ASEAN country through Tencent's video production platform, VTV. But the key thing here is that this culture is changing, not a one-way street. Through the Chinese platform, like the Tencent TV, the Chinese version of the VTV, Southeast Asian movie and drama are also very popular among Chinese young people. Through the dramas, young Chinese generation have become interested in the traditional custom and sports of Southeast Asian countries, and discussion on online platforms like WeChat that have led to young Chinese people traveling to Southeast Asia. The cultural economy connect young people's online and offline activity. It's now fashionable for young Chinese to travel to Southeast Asian country in traditional custom and take photos and share them on social media like WeChat and other platforms. this beautiful photo and comfortable travel experience may in turn inspire other young people to take an interest in Southeast Asian films and ASEAN culture. Also, recent this Texan farm game Bat Wukong make a really good example for how the cultural economy is reburning traditional culture and creating connection between China and ASEAN countries. And our colleague, Dr. Lee, will go deeper for that. But what I want mention is that Bat Wukong, the Monkey King Sun Wukong, is based on the Indian monkey god Hanuman. And Hanuman also have some cultural influence in ASEAN country. There are similar monkey characters in both Thai and Indonesia traditional theater. So this bring the traditional cultures from China and Southeast Asia together and get a bigger influences. And let's make some short remark here. And for the time limits, I think the Global South now is no longer a recipient of cultural globalization, but also a producer. Instead of large country exerting a one-way cultural influence on smaller country, like the global, like the content globalization 1.0 phase, and now the content from smaller country can also is reach through the platform. In an era, I think in an era of political polarization, we can be more optimistic about the cultural exchange of the new generation. I end at here. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Huang, for such an insightful presentation. And it was really striking for us to also understand that countries or individuals in the Global South who were traditionally consumers of content, they are also being able to be producers of content with the help of these social network platforms like Tencent. And this also presents opportunities for us to be able to challenge some of the challenges that we are facing in the world, like political polarization, and also help us to maintain cross-cultural ties between different communities. Now, to take us further into this discussion, I would love to invite our next presenter, who is Dr. Ling Chuan, an assistant professor, assistant researcher at the Institute of Sociology, Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Dr. Chuang holds a PhD in sociology and completed postdoctoral research at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and his research focuses on youth sociology, cultural sociology, and sports sociology. He has published several academic papers in Chinese and English language journals, and including Young and China Youth Study. Currently, Dr. Lee is leading a National Social Science Fund project and participating in multiple major Chinese Academy of Social Science research projects. And today, Dr. Chuang is going to speak to us about the Black Myth Wukong, synergizing culture, tech, and industry, a cultural materialistic exploration. The floor is yours, Dr. Chuang.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to share with you my recent research titled Black Myth Wukong, Synergizing Culture, Tech, and Industry, a Cultural Materialist Exploration. The next slide, please. And the third plenary session of the 20th Central Committee emphasized strengthening cultural confidence, preserving Chinese heritage, adapting to the fast-changing information technology landscape. But two prime examples of this vision are the Beijing Central Axis, recently added to the World Heritage List, and the digital Dunhuang, with digital relics of the beautiful Dunhuang treasures, both supported by the Tencent Games technology, including VR, AR, game engines, and on-site scanning. Together, these projects demonstrate how the potential of gaming technology to advance cultural preservation and expand cultural communication globally. The direction aligns with the Chinese booming gaming industry, now a global leader with 674 million users and 147 billion RMB in revenue in just the first half of 2024. And 17 of the top 50 game companies are now based in China. It is based on exactly these developments Black Myth Wukong became a cultural phenomenon upon its launch. With over 3 million concurrent players on its first day, within 3 days, it sold 10 million units, generating around 3 billion RMB. The game also trended in 6 topics on Weibo the second it was released, and drew 200,000 Twitch viewers and dominated nearly 100% of the Bilibili's Game Live section. Also, inspired new avenues in the integration of culture and tourism, merchandise, and hospitality. Next slide, please. And to make sense of this phenomenon, the research centers around 2 key questions. The first is how can video games serve as a medium to promote and represent Chinese traditional culture in the digital age? And second, how can advanced gaming technology and cultural storytelling integrate seamlessly to engage modern audiences? Next, please. So the study employs Raymond Williams' cultural materialism as the theoretical lens to look at Black Myth Wukong's phenomenon. Williams conceptualizes culture as a realized signifying system, a powerful embedded mechanism that integrates culture, technology, and industrial practices. And this perspective frames culture as an active, productive force that not only reflects technology and economy, as its material conditions, but also shapes them. Therefore, within this framework, I examined the dynamic interactions between cultural form, technology, and industry in the analysis. Next, please. One of the ways Black Myth Wukong achieved this is through the carefully designed and selected game mechanics. The game draws from the Journey to the West journal, reimagining it in an interactive role-playing format. This RPG structure allows players to experience the 81 trials to become the great sage, immersing them in the challenges and transformations along the journey as the destined one, who would eventually become the great Sun Wukong. Another key aspect is the game's diorama-style level design, which creates a structured, chapter-based storytelling experience with hundreds of meticulously crafted monsters, enemies, and intricate maps and rich environmental details. And finally, the action mechanics borrow elements from Souls-like games, adding layers of difficulty and skill-based challenges, creating a flow state experience that strengthens gamers or players' emotional engagement with the narrative. Next, please. Black Myth Wukong embodies what defines a 3A game, a production demanding substantial investment in time, resources, and money. Developed over 6 years by a team of 140 professionals, its production cost reached 15 to 20 million RMB per hour of gameplay. For players, however, the essence of 3A gaming lies in the game's visual aesthetics and immersive experience. The reason why Black Myth Wukong stands out from other probably hundreds of games based on the same cultural narrative. Black Myth Wukong uses Unreal Engine 5, integrating advanced visual technologies for breathtaking fidelity and computational efficiency. The key highlight is the digital construction of 36 national heritage sites, bringing iconic Chinese landmarks to the gaming experiences, made possible by those technologies. Additionally, motion capture and AI-assisted frame generation greatly enhance the realism of the game, immersing gamers in the world of Chinese mythology. Next, please. Thank you. The success of Black Myth Wukong also reflects China's sustained technological growth in gaming, underpinned by a maturing industrial framework and strong talent base. Since mobile games surpassed PC games in 2017 in China, reaching 270 billion RMB in revenue, of which 76% is from mobile games, China's gaming industry has become a global leader. Companies like Tencent have played a crucial role, not only nurturing the market, but also independent studios like Game Science, the studio that developed Black Myth Wukong. The game represents a unique Chinese model of 3D gaming production, where mobile game industry plays the pivotal role, paving the way for advanced technology and talent to converge with industrialization in the assembly line development process. Amidst complex global dynamics, this capacity for industrial scale production, supported by Tencent's investment, has allowed China's gaming industry to expand its reach, influencing sectors from tourism to new media. And this multi-sector synergy showcases a unique pathway for the continued expansion and innovation of China's gaming industry on the world stage. Next page, please. And to conclude, Black Myth Wukong exemplifies the cultural activation mechanism that I describe as an upward spiral of cultural growth within the gaming industry. The high-quality cultural narratives and mechanisms drive technology innovation, accelerating advances in the gaming technology. And this feeds back to support industrialization across the gaming sector, fostering greater diversity and refinement in game forms, and therefore strengthening this growth circle once again. Ultimately, the game embodies the potential of video games to serve as a powerful tool for cultural articulation and development. As one player summarized beautifully the emotion of seeing the Chinese well-known mythology in the 3A level game. I have roamed the wilderness of the American West on horseback, witnessed the brutality of war in the Normandy landings, sailed as a pirate in the Caribbean, and embarked on the assassin's journey in Egypt. I've been a robot defending my home planet in future wars and a monster hunter in Eastern European legends. Yet, I still want to return to the hometown and become the great sage equal to heaven, the hero I admired the most as a child. So I think this is probably the reason why the Black Myth Wukong became such a sensational phenomenon. I think to conclude the reason, probably the primary reason why is that it is a really good game for the players, and it articulates perfectly the cultural essence of the famous Chinese mythology. And that's my presentation today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for such an interesting research and presentation, which clearly showing how digital games are being used as a form of Chinese soft power to showcase the cultural activities of China. So thank you so much for sharing with us our insights, and I would like to remind our participants that feel free to post your questions and comments in the chat. We will be able to refer to them during the question and answer session. And also, please continue to interact with each other and introduce yourselves in the chat. So to continue with this conversation, I would love to introduce not introduce per se, our next speaker. I would like to call back Dr. Jamie Swart to come back and give a presentation. Her presentation is going to be on intercultural contact in the digital age, how cybersafe is changing acculturation. Dr. Stewart, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ronald, and thank you to the speakers beforehand as well. I'm going to be changing tack just a little bit, but those were incredibly interesting presentations and a hard one to follow, I think, talking about one of the most famous games now in mainland China, but also around the world. So I'm going to be talking specifically about intercultural contact in the digital age and cyberspace in terms of acculturation. So I'm going to start with discussing what these concepts actually mean. So to begin with, there's been a really long history of traditional media and intercultural adaptation studies, but less on emerging tech. What I mean by that is the history of media and communication studies shows us that all the way back to radio, and even before that, just general writing, the way that we communicate culture through our different technologies has received lots of attention, and this increased substantially with television, as we have television shows showing a lot of different cultural forms and expressions. So the intercultural adaptation side of that, and where that comes in, is how we understand different cultures through exposure to their media. But there has been less study about that in terms of cultural understandings and how we adjust to new cultural forms in things like social media or gaming. So this is a relatively new area, but that doesn't mean the research that goes behind it is new. What is particularly important about online and digital technologies is that they create this space of hybridity, and it was already talked about in the very first presentation about production and consumption, but they allow for this ability to produce one's own cultural forms as well as consume others. And what it does, and what the suggestion of digital technologies is, that it reconfigures this notion of what a community is, and a reimagining of the self across geospatial boundaries. So who am I as a person? Who is my cultural group in this space that is no longer necessarily connected to a specific geographic location? And I really want to highlight that from my own research and from a psychological point of view, digital life is an extended sphere of our life. It's not different from our offline lives. It is a part of. And so I really like this. I really like this quote from Chen and Zhang, and that the compression of time and space due to the convergence of new media and globalization has shrunk the world into a much smaller interactive field. And I don't think that actually makes it smaller, even though they talk about shrinking. What that means is that it's much more accessible. So in one of the critical ways that I've been looking at in terms of cultural communities in online spaces, accessible cultural communities, are the digital diaspora. So diaspora, for those who don't know, is a term that refers to people who share a culture or a common origin, but are living away from their traditional homelands. And for those who are living away from their traditional homelands, digital diaspora gives us a way of kind of connecting into those communities and into our homelands. So for instance, somebody from mainland China who plays the game, who's living outside of mainland China and plays the game Black Myth, is connecting into their culture and particularly into their cultural community. And what this means is that belonging is flexible, and it's now a dynamic process that's often digitally mediated. And that digital mediation is with those who remain in the homeland, so with people who remain back where you were originally from, or where your parents and family are from, the community within the place that you're settled in, as well as this global community of people who are connected to the internet, who are living outside of their homeland. And the term digital diaspora is really important because it is relational and it is spatial. And what I mean by spatial is kind of beyond the constraints of geographic space. So digital diaspora is kind of, it's a process, it's not a thing, of identity and community and a recalibration of the self. And it's a reimagining of opportunities to spread culture, to influence policy as well. And I'm going to talk about it in just a minute. So the work that I've done on digital diaspora has particularly been within the Sri Lankan context, and I want to highlight the importance of the digital diaspora for conflict situations. So diaspora, even before digital technology's big thing, were particularly important because of their role in peace building as well as their role in conflict. And in Sri Lanka in 2022, this situation really came to the fore. There was an economic crisis because of failure to make foreign debt payments, and this really spiraled. And so critically and interestingly, this was spurred on by social media through these particular hashtags, which I've listed here. And this idea of the important influence of digital diasporas, the people who are part of the diaspora really came together to influence what was going on the ground in Sri Lanka at that point in time, and to either undermine or to promote recovery. So these are the two critical issues that the digital diaspora are now involved in, and Sri Lanka is only just one example of this. I know I'm running out of time, so and I've got lots to talk about. But this is a photo of what happened during this time, and you can see here in this picture that actually even on the placards there were social media hashtags. This is because the community itself started online and was really connected into those Sri Lankans who were not in Sri Lanka at that time. So I did a bit of research with this group of people and found that they were using social media to connect into what was happening in this time through their diaspora communities, predominantly through WhatsApp, actually. And they felt like it was really connecting them so much that they didn't have to read the news, that they were checking this every single day, and that it also was quite a strange feeling for them to be on the sidelines of the conflict and watch from outside, even though they were highly invested. The other thing that I really wanted to quickly talk about is tech and the process of acculturation, which is where people move or migrate to another context and what happens in that space. Because of the access, the omnipresent access to technology, this has enabled people who are moving across cultures to have both information and social capital. And in some research, we've found that the types of media that one engages with when they move across cultures, that is migrants and refugees, is actually really important to the experiences. So media that is consumed that's oriented towards one's heritage culture tends to support people in their identification with their cultural group and maintain their heritage culture, but it can also lead them to having feelings of disconnection. That the communication and context within settlement media context, that is within the place that you're living, are also particularly important for adjustment and diversity within social networks. So that is, if you're engaging with media that's not from your heritage culture, but that's from the place that we are currently living, this can reduce stress and allow you to increase support. I know that I'm talking for 8 minutes is very hard for me. I want to talk for a whole lot longer, but I am getting towards my conclusions. So using these two examples, the digital diaspora and the ways in which consumption of media, cultural media can assist and also detract from settlement experiences of migrant and refugees, I want to say that what we've found across a variety of studies is that technology generally has positive effects of intercultural adaptation. So it's supporting communities who are living outside of their settlement countries. It's supporting them with adapting to the context in which where their home countries are in crisis. It's supporting them with living and adjusting to their current environments through things like connection, information, social support, and coping. And but the content of the media consumed and produced and the motivations for it matter. That what I mean to say by that is if people are consuming heritage cultural media forms for the purpose of because they're trying to support themselves and they don't want to connect with the other communities, this can actually be particularly bad. So technology can also be a risk and a source of concern through sorry, I've lost my mouse. Through these sorts of issues, surveillance of people people online, exposure to stereotypes and misinformation about different cultural groups, polarization, and this other thing called long distance nationalism, which tends to happen with diasporic communities when they're not in their country of origin anymore, but they feel strongly nationalist towards it and maybe potentially produce conflict in that environment. And the other thing that I want to say is what the research shows very clearly for international students, for example, when they're only consuming media within the network of co-ethnics, that is people who are, say, other international students from their own cultural groups, it can lead to disconnection. And then sometimes this issue of hikikomora, which is total disconnection from the society. So it's good for you, but it does have...
Jamie, could you please wrap up?
That's it. I'm wrapping up. This is the very last slide, which is my call to action for people who are interested in culture and digital technologies to come along to a conference that I'm chairing that is specifically about this topic. If you're interested, please get in touch with me. And I want to thank you all for listening. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamie. Maybe what would be helpful is to copy the link to the conference in the chat for the benefit of our attendees of the webinar. Thank you so much for such a very insightful presentation in introducing the concept of digital diasporas and clearly showing the examples from Sri Lanka, how this can influence events happening home, both in a positive and a negative way. Thank you very much. That was really very insightful. And now to continue with this discussion, I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is Dr. Jenny Lu, a lecturer in intercultural communication at the University of Manchester. Her research focuses on the nexus between information and communication technologies and migration within intercultural studies. Prior to joining the Center of Translation and Intercultural Studies, Dr. Jenny was an assistant professor at the Faculty of Humanities and Arts at Macau University of Science and Technology between the years 2019 and 2022, and worked as a researcher and outreach officer at the United Nations University Institute in Macau between 2017 and 2019. So today, Dr. Jenny Ju is going to present to us on WeChat use among labor migrants during cultural adaptation. So Dr. Jenny, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ronald, and thank you everyone for having me today. So my talk will basically exemplify some of Jamie's idea about the roles of social media in acculturation. So today, briefly, I will talk about my research about the WeChats among the labor migrants, especially for their cultural adaptation and their social media use during the COVID-19. This is our research context, as Macau, as a special administrative region of China, is bordered to the north by the Zhuhai city, and it depends on migrant workers to sustain its economic development. And among the non-resident workers in Macau, we can see that about 70% of them from the mainland China, and basically engaged in the hotels and construction sectors, and some are from the Filipino Vietnamese. They're doing the domestic work. And for the mainland Chinese migrant workers, most of them left their original places in the rural areas in China and came to work in Macau, but live in Zhuhai for residence due to the high living costs there. So every day they cross the Gongbei ports in Zhuhai and the border gate in Macau. So do this commuting every day. For their life, as the labor migrants, they suffer the vulnerabilities. They self-describe themselves to be zombies sometimes for selling the labor, and they suffered for being the ruthless and the transient and isolated from the local friends. And some of them, they were discriminated due to their occupation. For example, some of them, they're working as cleaners and security guards, the Mandarin speaking and their mainland identity. So when they cross the Zhuhai-Macau border, the mobile phone has played a very important role in their mobilities. They can gain access to more social media platforms such as the Facebook and X, but the WeChat as a multifunctional and predominant social media platform in the mainland has been perceived to be the best. So first, we are trying to see how about the role of the WeChat in their border crossing experience. So we collected data from the group discussion, did the in-depth interview, and also did the online observation. And then we are trying to do the thematic analysis to identify the themes emergent on their WeChat use. And this is what we have basically found. So they use the WeChat for the personal and instrumental purposes. For the interpersonal communication, they use WeChat to bond and maintain the relationship with the families and Laoxiang. They are the people from the same village, and they use this to bridge with the colleagues and facilitate their work. They also use WeChat for entertainment by sharing the emoji and the jokes and following some social news. Yes, and they also play games. And during the festival, they use the red packets in their family chatting group to gain the lively experience. In their daily life, they also share the happy, post well the WeChat moments to disseminate positive energy to cheer themselves and also their friends. And for the instrumental roles, they can use WeChat to get the information. For example, they use the official accounts to acquire the knowledge about the Macau and also the border and immigration. And some of them, they engaged in the business, I'll say the activities. For example, Daigou, so they will buy some luxury and healthcare products for the consumers in the mainland. And as we know, the COVID-19 has significantly impacts our life, and especially about this migrant population, such as refugees, the immigrants, and also labor migrants. Most of our participants, they are, how to say, the essential workers. So they cannot work remotely, just like some of us. So at that time, they stopped in Macau, and they use the social media, or for example, the WeChat to post some, how to say, the to share some posts about their life, for example, about quarantine, the missing family, and their, how to say, helplessness. Just as one participant shared, I suffered the pain because my children were at home and I missed them so much, so I couldn't do anything for my family. And we are trying to look at how they use the social media to respond to the, how to say, the crisis. We basically take the social technical approach to see the how they use it. So as we know, the social media has integrated into our everyday life, and the social media use is dynamically interacted with the features of the social media platforms, the structural forces, and the users, I'll say the agency. So we interviewed 14 female, I'll say the mainland low-skilled laborers who are stuck in Macau during the crisis, to see their understanding or the roles of the social media. This is what we have already found. We identify the ambivalent role of the social media. It has the enabling yet constraining role. Basically, it can support the participants or the female cleaners with the emotional comfort and multiple sources related to the COVID-19. But their addictive social media use increased their stress, and their limitations in information literacy made them difficult to check the authenticity of the information. As we know, there was a lot of fake and rumors there. All of them, they advocate for the social media as the risk, I would say, the management tool, but not noticing the surveillance role of social media. So based upon the labor migrant social media use in their daily life, especially during the COVID-19, we can see the empowering role of the social media, but it cannot make a radical social economic transformation for them. Moving beyond the technology, and we recommend for the, how to say, the gender inclusive approach to explore the ICT empowerment or disempowerment. And we recommend the social protection from the government, especially the policy making on the immigration and the employment systems. Yeah, and I think this is everything I have for today, and thank you for listening.
Okay, Dr. Jenny, thank you very much for such a very interesting presentation and clearly outlining how WeChat is being used for cultural adaptation by Chinese workers from economic, social well-being, and all those use cases. Thank you so much. And to conclude this panel presentations, would love to hear from a different perspective. And it's my pleasure to introduce our next presenter, Dr. Duong Bich Hanh, a program specialist for culture at UNESCO Regional Office for Eastern Asia. So Dr. Duong Bich Hanh joined the UNESCO Regional Office for East Asia in August 2022 to manage the UNESCO Cultural Program in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, China, Japan, Mongolia, and Republic of Korea. Prior to this, she spent 13 years at the UNESCO Ha Noi and Bangkok offices, supporting the Mekong countries to implement UNESCO's 6 cultural conventions and promoting the role of culture and creativity in sustainable development. She also directed a number of UNESCO Asia-Pacific regional programs, such as the Asia-Pacific Awards for Cultural Heritage Conservation, and was involved in the conceptualization and implementation of new initiatives like the UNESCO Competence Framework for Heritage Management, Teaching, Learning with Living Heritage, and culture enhancement, the role of digital technology for culture. So today she's going to talk to us about leveraging digital technologies for culture as a global public good. Dr. Duong, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ronald. Can I please check whether everyone see my full screen?
Yes, we can see your presentation.
Yeah, so thank you very much to UNU Macau colleagues for inviting us to the webinar today. As you could see that I'm not a researcher. I really enjoy listening to the cases and the research that everyone has been presenting. But for this one, allowed me to speak from the UNESCO's perspective and share with you on how in UNESCO we have been using digital technology for our culture sector, for the work in our culture sector, and some of the challenges that we would like to maybe call for collaboration and support from all the partners to address. So in UNESCO, when we talk about culture, we talk a very, very diverse range of dimensions. We talk about heritage sites, we talk about intangible cultural heritage, living heritage, we talk about museums, and we talk about the very diverse domains of cultural and creative industries, such as performing arts, visual arts, music, film, gastronomy, design, and so on and so forth. So these are really what we cover under the culture sector, with the overall objective to protect cultural heritage and to promote and foster cultural creativity. So for us, the position for culture has a great role for achieving sustainable development. Of course, there are many different areas that where culture contributes to sustainable development, whether it's social development, environmental protection. But here I would like to highlight the economic developments that the culture sector potentially contribute to, because as you can see in the figures on the screen, the creative economy contributes to 6.1 of the global economy, representing 4.33 trillion US dollars per year. And the sector also employs more people ages 15 to 29 than any other sector. So as Rona introduced in my brief profile at the beginning, when I was in UNESCO Bangkok office, we initiated this program called TechCul, Tech and Culture, because we have the strong belief that creativity and digital technology can really transform the culture sector and offer new opportunities. And together we can tackle, as you can see, that's how we come up with TechCul, because we can really tackle many challenges that the culture sector is currently facing, including the growing threat to heritage, both from natural and man-made disasters, to limited revenue streams, to limited access of cultural professionals to resources, to the lack of capacity, to the lack of collaboration between different stakeholders, and the unsystematic data and knowledge management. And we have very high hope that digital technology can really help us to address many of these issues. So there has been really a very rich way of using digital technology for the culture sector from UNESCO's perspective. A lot of that have been using digital technology for documentation, including from the tangible heritage sites. Many of them are World Heritage sites, some of them are not. But digital technology, some of the very innovative, advanced like LiDAR or 3D technology scanning has been really helping us to document and capture all the technical details of the cultural heritage. Documentation also goes to the realm of intangible cultural heritage, museums, and of course, many of the performances, very music, very films, is all like using the digital technology. And the documentation has really been helping us to do a lot in our work. Awareness raising, for example, it has a high benefits for benefit raising, and I would just like to use this opportunity to bring up this new virtual museum of stolen cultural objects that UNESCO is going to launch together with Interpol in the coming months, to really raise awareness about the importance of cultural objects and how they have been stolen, how they have been brought across the borders, and what we need to do to really protect these cultural objects. Documentation that have been also very helpful for us in restoration project. The picture that you can see there is one of a restoration project that UNESCO just completed in Mosul in Iraq. So without the documentation using digital technology, that would be really not possible for us to know the status of the monuments, status of the buildings and sites before it got destroyed. That would not helping, to help us to do correct restoration. And of course, digital technology have given a lot of cultural access and participation. I think most of the presentations that were done earlier was about cultural access and participation. We can see that many people can go and enjoy other people's culture, like Google Arts and Culture, like the ICH link is an initiative by one of the UNESCO center during COVID time, and now it continues. That you can see a lot of performances that usually you can only see in theaters. Now you can see it in on the screen, and of course, not to mention things like books and films and TV programs. So all that can really brought a very active participation of the global audience. And last but not least, digital technology also really bring the business opportunities for many cultural practitioners and artists, and who usually maybe would not have access to their clients, to their audience. But now with digital technology, they can earn additional income that they would not be able to otherwise. But then there are a number of challenges that also comes with the usage of digital technology. So of course, as Jamie mentioned in the beginning, that 2/3 of the world have access and continuously and increasingly using internet, but that also means that 1/3 of the world do not have access to infrastructure. If they do have access to infrastructure, maybe they don't have money to buy mobile phone or iPad or on these equipment that is needed for using for taking advantage of the digital technology. Many people do not have the skills. In China, I must have said that the digital skills is quite high compared to many other countries that I have worked with. So some people do not know how to use their phone to really promote their cultural businesses. Many people who not know how to bring their products and goods on online platform to sell. And then, of course, when we put the collaboration, when we put the cultural sector, cultural professionals, artists, practitioners together with the technology, from the technology sector, they like talking two different languages. They do not really have a common understanding. And that also linking to the part of the collaboration between the cultural sector and the technology sector still can be have a lot of room to improve. The second issue is I would like to bring up is about the rights or the who owns this on these cultural products that now being put online. Like a lot of time you see games company, for example, coming in and using the different cultural elements to of course to on the one hand you provide entertainment to the whole gaming community, but on the other hand, what kinds of benefits the communities, the heritage bearers, the artists, the practitioners can earn from all this cultural digitization? whether a lot of the time influencers, for example, go to different places, putting massive image like videos online. On the one hand, yes, it raises awareness and visibility about that particular community, but then on the other hand, is that really the way that the communities want that to happen? Sometimes they don't. They rather just be quiet and silent and not being known to the world. And then eventually, how do all this digitalization or how all this digital technology bring benefits to the culture sector, how to make their life better, how to increase their incomes. And when I talk about the culture sector, I talk specifically about the heritage bearers, about the artists, about the practitioners who would usually have to use their creativity and cultural heritage for their own living and livelihood. And so that reminds me, that brings me to the last points that I would like to raise is and maybe to promote is the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence. So of course, when ethical perspective, it applies to anything, like the whole point when I talk about previously about the ownership, about the copyright, or it all dealing with the ethical issues. But then now with the AI coming in, ethical issues becoming even more critical, because for the culture sector, we start seeing people losing jobs. Many of the people in the creative sector start losing jobs because AI is taking it, whether you are a graphic designer, whether you are doing the voiceover for movies, whether you are doing illustration for books or for animations. A lot of these jobs are now being replaced by AI. So what kind of policies, what kind of considerations that need to be putting in place to really protect the job of the people in the culture sector? So that is essentially just some of the points that I would like to raise. So of course, yeah, I do not want to dampen the spirit. Of course, we are all very grateful for the digital technology because it have helped us to do a lot in protecting our cultural heritage and to promote our creativity. But I would just like to maybe raise some of the challenges that we are currently facing and hoping that we can work together to address that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Han, for such a very great presentation and also for highlighting the critical ethical challenges that rise by the use of digital technologies, issues to do with the gender digital divide, the ethics of AI, and also cultural appropriation, and the need for us to have robust legal and standard frameworks for us to really be able to do this in a way that is sensitive and culturally appropriate for everyone involved. So we have come to the end of our presentations, and I would love to thank all our presenters for such amazing presentations and how all the ideas were integrated with each other. And we'll be moving next to our question and answer segments, and I would love to remind our attendees to be able to post their questions in the chat, or else you can raise your hands if you've got questions to ask, and Daishan will be able to help me to identify people that would have raised their hands. But quickly, before we move to the next segment, I would love to hear a little bit more from all the panelists, more like to give me your closing remarks. I would want you to tell me how can stakeholders, for example, industry, academia, policymakers, best support inclusive and ethical representation of culture through digital media and or the use of digital technologies for cultural understanding. Just short reactions. Maybe we can start with Dr. Han, we go to Dr. Stewart, Dr. Benny, and Dr. Chua, and the rest of the presenters. Very quickly, I'm also posting the question in the chat.
Yes, so thank you, Ronald. Just very quickly, from the researchers, I think that we really do not have a full understanding of the extent to which digital technology can benefit the culture sector, and also the way that it can the challenges that it can bring. So I think this one really we couch very much on the research side. We are very interested to learn the good cases, for example, about how digital technology has helped the cultural communities to make their life better. From the private sector, and I think the skill development, for example, I think for us, for the culture sector, I feel is very important. A lot of the artists, for example, do not even really have the full knowledge of how they can leverage digital technology to get their work out there. Of course, maybe they know how to put that on iTunes and Tencent platform, but then there must be ways that to go beyond that. So I think skill development is very important, that we feel that it can be benefit from perhaps the private sector. And then for the policies, of course, I think in terms of policies that to be developed to protect the culture sector, especially linking to the point concerning ethics of AI that I just mentioned as the last point in my presentation, for example, what kind of protection mechanism can be put in so that the cultural practitioners and artists and professionals do not lose their job over the AI? What kinds of mechanism that needs to be put in for the big producers can do benefit sharing with the cultural sector? So I think in that sense, policies, regulations that really has to be coming from the policymakers, from the ministries, and from the governments of the concerns. So I think those are just very quickly some of the points that I thought we could really benefit from some of the stakeholders that Rona mentioned.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Han. Dr. Stewart, any reactions?
Yeah, so I noticed that across all of the presentations, people were talking in many different ways of kind of balancing commercial potentials as well as cultural production and consumption. And I think this is really important because what is being produced and who it benefits and how it benefits the communities, I don't think they need to be opposite to one another. I think that companies, the private sector really can leverage ethically and appropriately off of good stories. And I think that, you know, the conversations that were discussed here about the Korean K-dramas or in K-pop as well as Black myth are really good examples of this. Like there was a really wonderful way that this was talked about, like the essence of mythology is told as a good story. You know, how can we tell these really good cultural stories? And that is beneficial to the private sector. It's also beneficial to the players who are receiving those positive stories about culture. But I think that also needs to be coupled with exactly what Jenny and Han mentioned, digital literacy skills. So how do we kind of move beyond this, just the story, to what the story means and how it impacts offline as well as online? So how can we take that, like, we want to preserve culture as we see it and disseminate culture as in all of its beautiful forms, but we also want to do that as coupled with investments in actual cultural heritage. So I don't think there's one good answer to this, but I think that companies and private sector and policymakers and academia can all come together about how we best disseminate these good cultural stories in a way that's engaging and makes people want to do good things. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamie. What about Jenny? What do you think? How can stakeholders best support inclusive and ethical representatives of culture through digital media?
Yeah, so from the perspective from the academia, at least for me, we talk about the technology redemption or the digital innovation. I think the key that is how we use it. Just like the AI we mentioned, it could be our friends and also the enemies. So we aimed at, the digital technology for good through highlighting its positive force in the intercultural, the communication. And the second, to understand the intercultural, I think we need to start with what we share in common and respect for the differences. And I think this contributes to the cultural diversity, equality, and the inclusiveness. For the academia, as a lecturer, I think we can also develop the the curriculums. For example, in an intercultural communication program, to have some courses in the digital ethics and social media literacy to prepare our students to use the digital tools responsibly in the multicultural context. And for the research, I think we can conduct some studies examining the cultural bias, for example, in digital media representation and digital storytelling, and explore how this can be mitigated. And meanwhile, I think we can put more attention on the global south and vulnerable groups to promote the mutual adaptation of the culture and the digital technology development. Yeah, so I just take talk about my perspective views from academia, and this is what I have, what I want to share. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jenny. Dr. Lee, any reactions?
Well, I think I very much agree with Professor Stewart's point. I think probably two aspects that I want to talk about. The first one's been the cultural forms. So what kind of cultural content and what kind of cultural products that we should produce or we should encourage. I think it's the kind of cultural work that genuinely engage people. It's the kind of product that we should encourage to be produced more and more. And not just I think it is very easy to focus, especially when we talk about digital cultures. It is very easy to talk about technology and to have this very technological centric point of view. But you see a lot of very high tech cultural products, but they are not really engaged in people's everyday lives. So and I think that's why probably why they are not maybe commercially successful, or maybe that's why they're not engaging with the real issues of our societies. So I think in my case, Black Myth Wukong shows that this cultural story that is exacting and it actually resonates with the players. And the technology and industry can only amplify this impact and help it to reach more people when the cultural work itself is worthy of it. Yeah, so that's the first point. And the second one, I think, is the access. So we have to break the we've seen nowadays that the cultural and technological hegemony happening in a lot of the digital industries and cultural industries. So I think it's very important that we keep in mind that we should break these boundaries, and then we should break the hegemony. So for instance, like the one of the technical aspects of Black Myth Wukong that I think is really egalitarian is that I use the very high-end digital technology to lower the standard of access to this very high quality gaming experience. It's the same for example, the Beijing Central Access project and the Digital Dunhuang project. It kind of because these projects are the kind of projects that collaborates with the national government. So it's first of all not for profit, and second of all is open for all. And also, I think there is also this boundary between the online and offline, which is also talked about by Professor Stewart. I think. Oh, sorry. Another point that I added before this is also the diversity of cultural content that we need to have for healthy society. So this is also the part of the cultural hegemony that I was talking about. You see a lot of times where digital platforms have a very specific selection of cultural content, and you see companies that are dominant in industries and producing for example, similar narratives or similar ideologies of, say, for example, gaming content. So I think it's very important to also break that cultural hegemony. With the online and offline point, I think with digital technology, we can do a lot more with bridging the gap between the online experiences and offline experiences. So, for example, the Black Myth Wukong bringing all the historical sites in the gaming experiences that actually stimulated the tourism industry in those locations. So overall, I think these are the aspects that we should focus on when we talk about producing a more egalitarian cultural environment in the society. So industries, policymakers, and academia can work together to, for example, investing in small creative projects that bring cultural heritage to life, and fostering environments for cultural production, and maybe research on what the kind of cultural narratives that we need for a healthy development of the culture of the society in general, I think. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Lee, thank you very much. Your closing remarks, Dr. Huang.
Okay, thank you. I want to continue the point of Dr. Lee's raises. As a student of policy and political economy, I'm more concerned about the impact of polarizations and the misunderstanding on cross-cultural communications. I think nowadays people are increasingly value their local cultures and hold up the outsider, understanding other culture based on the historical origins of the local place itself. So as I present in my slides, and in an era when cross-cultural communication rely on televisions, it rely on the movie, culture products include a lot of culture appropriations, and for example, some comedy jokes come from cultural stereotype. So I think in this day and age, people are more sensitive to such culture appropriations and group stereotypes in the productions and disseminations of the cultural product. In particular, when such discussions are placed in the context of social medias, even minor misunderstanding can be amplified and even lead to conflict between the group online. So I think this conflict can be avoided with better understanding and communication in advance. So I think that the stakeholder like think tanks, like even like the platform company, the internet company, and our academia should provide the content producer with a set of guidelines to remind organization and individual content producers of such problem, especially about the culture appropriations, to avoid such things, to make a wide way for contribution to the culture understanding for different kinds of groups. So this is my point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Huang, and all the panelists from giving me your closing remarks. Now, I would like us to move to the next session, which is the question and answer session. And I have a question already, but for all the other attendees, if you've got a question, please raise your hand and then you unmute yourself and then feel free to ask your question. Meanwhile, while we wait for other questions, I would love to pose this question. I think this question is directed at Dr. Lee. It's coming from Kali Dan. The question is, what are the key strategies and challenges for Black Myth Wukong as it aims to expand its reach to non-Chinese players in the global market? Dr. Lee, do you have any thoughts about this question?
Sorry, I didn't get the first part. What's the what of Black Myth Wukong? Sorry.
Okay, what are the key strategies and challenges for Black Myth Wukong as it aims to expand its reach to non-Chinese players in the global market? I'll also post the question in the chat.
Well, I could only guess because I couldn't get to actually interview the game science studio. But from their open interviews, I think they are first of all very passionate about creating a really engaging gaming experience. I think that's the primary goal of their work. It uses technologies and it's based on these industrialization of Chinese gaming industry. But the central I don't even want to use the word strategies because I don't think it is. It is just their passion, I think, to create really good games. But the challenges, I think, of course, it's the lack of familiarity with the Chinese mythologies to the international audience. So it is very difficult to make a well, culturally friendly to all of the international players, because Journey to the West is a very thick piece of literature. So you need to put in a lot of effort to be able to fully comprehend the depths of the a narrative. I think that's probably one of the cultural barriers that I faces.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for such an excellent response. And I've seen Dr. Stewart, your hand is up.
Yes, it is. I actually just wanted to, there are a couple of things I wanted to say, and I wanted to ask the panel a specific question after I've made a couple of comments. The first one is, thank you, Dr. Lee, talking about cultural hegemony. I think this is a really important point, and that is, creating spaces where there are many diverse cultural forms. And I wanted to kind of feed into something else that you said, which was about, Han talked about the ethics of AI, but one of the ways that we're creating non-diverse spaces is through AI, which recreates cultural narratives, and the training sets and data that is used, whether that be like if you're using an LLM that's based on Chinese language, or whether you're using ChatGPT, which is scraped from a predominantly English language data set, which has embedded cultural values. This is recreating cultural values, and it's actually making invisible those things. It makes it seem like an objective reality that's coming from somewhere else, but it's not. It's actually it's culturally informed, and that's also an issue of the algorithms which are built into social media, which will prioritize particular types of content and then create echo chambers. So, like if we're working towards cultural diversity, we actually really need to be thinking about AI and how AI may hinder this process of kind of more diverse representations, just simply in the way that some of the algorithms that are embedded into that work at the moment, and the way that generative AI systems have been developed. So yeah, I just think I want to say that this is something that we need to discuss more broadly. And I see Han has her hand up, but I also wanted to pose a question, which maybe can be answered after Han makes a comment, which is that one of the things that was talked about a lot and really interests me is this, because I did a little bit of research on Black Myth after hearing about it, is, the exposure to multiple cultural sites and tourism. What are the unintended consequences of engaging people in cultural heritage? I mean, it's wonderful, right? We want people to know more about this, but are there ecological consequences from tourism or over tourism on the basis of these things? And I'm sorry, it's a bit left field, but you know, we did talk about the interaction between offline and online spaces, and sometimes we don't actually consider what the flow-on impacts are. So that I just wanted to see if anybody might want to address that, but maybe we can pass to Han, who also has something to say.
No, thank you, Jamie. No, just wanted to talk, mention a little bit about this cultural hegemony that Dr. Lee and mentioned. Then you kind of pick on, and of course, yeah, on the one hand, it's because of all this algorithm that being set up, but then on the other hand, we see that, for example, just going back from the artists putting things online. We see that European American, North American artists and artists from the developed, so-called more technologically advanced countries have a lot more ability to maneuver this digital environment to produce things and then to put them online. While on the other hand, we have many artists from the global south do not even know where to begin to use the technology to make it accessible. So yeah, so I think in that sense, the inequality in access, inequality in skills is also something that that we need to address. And UNESCO has actually the specific convention for the promotion and protection and promotion of the diversity of cultural expressions, and it places very much emphasis on supporting the artists and cultural practitioners from the global south to really be able to keep up. There are even like different mechanisms like preferential treatment, for example, how you give the preferential treatment to the cultural products from the global south so that it can really find space, whether it is online or whether it is offline, like in movie theaters, for example. Some of the countries really have to come up with regulations that the certain percentage of movies shown in local theaters have to be made by local production companies and not on just Hollywood films coming in and kind of take over the whole schedule. So yeah, so but just a long way to say that I agree very much with how we really kind of ensure the diversity of the cultural representations on the digital environment.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Han. Any other reactions in 1 minute from our panelists? Or any questions? If not, I would love to thank all our panelists for such excellent presentations and the whole information that you have really given us today. And also to attendees, thank you very much for attending our 10th UNU Macau collaborative webinar. I would love to invite you to continue following our social media pages, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook to get more information about UNU Generative Webinar Series. You can also check our YouTube page to see the previous session that we have had, and also continue to follow us and sign up for email alerts so that you can get information about more and upcoming events that we do here at UNU Macau. So thank you very much. Have a pleasant day. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.